Section 5 of the Open Public Meetings Act, Chapter 231, Public Laws, 1975. Be advised that notice of this meeting was made by posting on the bulletin board at Town Hall and serving the officially designated newspapers a notice stating that this meeting would take place at Town Hall today at 7:30 p.m. on Tuesday, December 18th, 2018. Please rise to salute the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Here. 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 Okay. May I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
May I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Chief Gilfeather. We're going to now confirm the appointment of police officer, Resolution 18266. Chief Gilfeather, would you give us some background on our new officer?
Good evening, everyone. I'd just like to thank the Township Committee, the Mayor, Business Administrator Donald, allowing the police department to hire an officer. So tonight we have Brian Markham. He is 25 years old and recently married December 8th to his wife, Gianna. Brian resides in Morristown and graduated from Morristown High School in 2011. He then attended Castleton University for one semester before joining the U.S. Army Reserves. Brian was deployed in Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, from June 2014 through May 2015, and in Afghanistan from December 2017 through September 2018. Brian continued his studies while in the Army Reserves, graduating from Montclair State University in August 2018 with a criminal justice bachelor's degree. Tonight with Brian are his wife, Gianna, his mother, Tina, and his in-laws, Kurt and Joel. Brian Mark.
Well, congratulations on your wedding. Yeah, you're welcome. May I have a motion to approve Resolution 18266, which confirms the appointment? So moved. May I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Reedy?
Yes.
Ms. Rosenberg?
Yes.
Ms. Rosenberg?
Yes.
Ms. Flagler?
Yes.
Mayor Burston?
Yes. Clerk, will you issue the office?
Nice to meet you. I state your name.
I, Brian Larkham,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
I will support the Constitution
I will support the Constitution
of the United States
of the United States
and the Constitution
and the Constitution
of the State of New Jersey,
of the State of New Jersey.
and I will faithfully discharge
I will faithfully discharge
the duties of police officer
the duty of police officer
of the Millburn Township Police Department
of the Millburn Township Police Department
according to the best of my ability,
according to the best of my ability,
so help me God.
so help me God.
Congratulations. Why don't we just take a couple of minutes in case anybody would like to exit stage left or stage right, as the case may be. Judy, any report? Steve?
No.
Okay, so first, Shade Tree had their meeting. They planted one tree in front of Town Hall. We were hoping for two, but unfortunately their second tree could not be planted because there was a big pipe in the ground. At least there's one shade tree. The next phase will be to remove the diseased ash trees in the golf course along New Brook. This will continue if the ground freezes for a solid week and the necessary equipment can be brought in. There was a tree planted on Mountain View across the entrance to the park by Whittingham. This will enhance that patch of grass. New Jersey Water is still under obligation to replace the trees on Glen Avenue that were removed during their work orders, and we will make sure that happens. The Environmental Commission met, and the High School Environmental Club, again, will host Aquafest this year. It's for the 3rd grade, and it alternates schools. We'll be at Glenwood this year in the spring. They will be teaching the kids about water conservation, clean water initiatives. There will be a speaker from New Jersey American Water. Our town DPW will have a speaker, and they actually open the sewer for the kids to help them understand that process. The Arboretum will have a presenter as well. The rain garden in Taylor Park needs some refreshing, and the Environmental Commission will be planting appropriate native species there, as well as the 2 corners at the large grassy knoll between the library and the first aid station on Lackawanna. And the shade tree will also be assisting with that project. Lastly, I would encourage everyone to watch this past Sunday night 60 Minutes, because we always talk about plastics in the Environmental Commission. The future is here, and it's ugly. Plastics are a pervasive problem all over the globe, even in the most remote parts of the world where no people live. Antarctica, Midway Island. China is no longer taking our recycling. The only answer is to reduce our usage. The Green Team and Green Schools are conducting educational programs throughout the town at every school. They actually have filtered water filling stations at every school, and they're hoping to install more of those. And even the teachers are really happy that they have those refilling stations. Millburn's master plan talks about waste reduction, green initiative, and possibly finding places for electric car charging stations in town. These are all things we'll be looking at. And that's it for those 2.
Thank you. Ms. Rosenberg.
Senior Citizen Committee met, and Battalion Chief Pisano from the Fire Department told seniors about emergency procedures, and they are encouraged to look on the website for more. The DMDA, with big news in that at our last meeting, we met last week, and after getting the budget approved and spending the year getting organized and regrouped, the president, David Sorkin, announced that he would not be seeking re-election next year in the new term. So at our last meeting, when that was discussed, it didn't seem like anybody else was stepping up to take over the board, and a motion was made to dissolve the District Management Corporation. And after some discussion, that was seconded, and the board voted to dissolve the entity. So now you are left with an issue. What does that mean? What are the next steps? So I was on a call yesterday with the lawyer who represented the board last year, Steve Melenik at Greenbaum Row, and he's looking at the paperwork, and we will see what happens. But basically, there's 2 steps. The board itself has to figure out how to unwind and finish up its mission in terms of as a board. There's some money, trying to figure out how that is handled. What I got from the call was that the money could be used, about $20,000, given to charity, given to the town, given to police and federal government, things like that. That's for the board to decide. For the town to decide is now, you still have an ordinance that has a special improvement district. What do you do? So leave these wise minds to figure that out. Any questions?
I have a question. Well, I'm not familiar with all of the DMDA's bylaws. Typically, when for a board to dissolve, it has to resolve to dissolve. okay? You can't just vote to dissolve, it has to pass a resolution causing the dissolution. Did that happen?
No.
So, absent its bylaws saying something to the contrary, I believe that under New Jersey law, it hasn't dissolved until it resolves to dissolve. And even if that's not the case, we may have the power to appoint the equivalent of a special master to safeguard the money. Because I don't know what signatures are required to spend the DMDA's money, but somebody needs to safeguard it.
Well, according to their governing documents, and they do have bylaws, their procedure was that they have a majority vote of their board could take that decision, make those decisions. So according to their bylaws, they did what they thought was appropriate. Whether a lawyer will now look at their actions and say they were appropriate, they're looking into that right now, number one. And number two, their own certificate of incorporation also speaks to that. So,
Well, who's safeguarding the money?
I am.
well, there is a treasurer. Right now, it's into their hands. They have the right to make loans, enter agreements. I mean, they could have, mortgaged the whole town if they wanted to. But they are your fiduciaries and they have responsibility. And our treasurer, who happens to be sitting here, is guarding the money. And
I
so-
guarantee I made a commit. Can I say something?
No,
or-
not yet.
Okay.
Not yet, but you can.
Let
But-
me know when I can.
Not yet, but I can tell you that I am aware that nothing can be signed without two signature, there's safeguards in place.
Correct.
They do have obligations, they have a lease that they need to finish up, they have legal fees, they have an audit. The best guesstimate of our esteemed treasurer is that at the end of the day, they're probably about $20,000. And according to their bylaws, it's up to them to decide how they wish to use it. So if they wanted it to a town charity, they could, if they wanted,
Well, it's typically subject to board approval, though. I mean, that's my point.
That's
No,
correct.
they're an independent entity based on, do you agree, Alex? We have, Alex was with me on the call
Do you
yesterday.
mean the DMDA board?
Yes.
Approval? Yeah,
That's
the
correct.
DMDA would have to approve how that.
Right,
It's
so
the board
Yeah.
approval, but I thought you meant this board.
No, not
Oh,
this
I'm
board.
sorry.
Right.
Yes, that board.
It typically, an officer typically, and again, I don't know its bylaws, typically can't exercise the authority to spend a certain amount of money absent board approval.
Correct.
Correct.
And
And
if
the board,
there's no board to approve it, then there can be no activity taken on that.
The board is
there's
in
still a
place.
board at this point.
It's not an open meeting.
Okay.
Thank you.
There's still a board. The board is not, and the board is not dissolving until it, and in fact, it might not be by the end of the year if they need a little more time to get their ducks in a row. They're all there. They called an emergency meeting on 3 days' notice for later this week to discuss how to, as a board, spend those funds.
There still is a board?
There's still a board.
I thought it was all.
They voted at the end of the year to dissolve, and if that's not feasible, to do so after.
I misunderstood. Immediate dissolution.
No.
It started with the president saying, I'm not seeking re-election. He didn't quit. He just said,
Right.
lose my number next year. And then when people were talking about what's going to happen next year, I think they realized that there was for various reasons that they didn't want to go forward. So now we have to figure that out.
Like to Mr. Levy, I've not dissolved a nonprofit corporation, but my general understanding is I have not seen the minutes of the meeting exactly what mode they used to vote, but that simply initiates a process. They're obliged to, as I understand it, do a dissolution plan. They have to file with the Attorney General that they're proposed to dissolve the corporation, and I think the final act will be the filing of a certificate of dissolution after they make provision for the payment of any creditors to make sure that all obligations have been satisfied. So I think better advice will come from this attorney who does this day in and day out, but there is an orderly process to determine exactly how money is expended and how it finally ends up.
That said, I personally was opposed to the dissolution, and I gave the board 10 reasons why I wish they would consider staying, and 10 reasons why I think it's more important that there's a sit in town, and that it's probably more productive than having nothing, especially for the business owners. But pursuant to the new bylaws, I was a non-voting member and unable to vote on that.
Any other questions?
I think Sam covered my questions.
Okay. Anything else?
Nope.
Thank you. Ms. Lieberberg, what did we forget?
So I attended the Cora Hartshorn Arboretum Board of Trustees meeting last week, and they'd like me to share with the community that on Friday, January 25th, so Friday nights at 7:30, they will be having the banjo player Tony Trishka will be at the Stonehouse, and there will be accompanying craft brewery by Alimentary Brewing Company. And Mr. Trishka has recorded songs with Pete Seeger, Alison Krauss, members of REM, Natalie Merchant, and Steve Martin. So they assure me that it will be a very peppy affair, and if you're interested in either bluegrass or banjo, we encourage you to attend.
Any other reports? Anything else? Do you have anything to report? So I was at the Library Board of Trustees meeting, and they're looking to do some serious renovations to the children's room, perhaps additional entryway, depending on cost, et cetera, and they're waiting to apply for the grants that we all voted to approve for library construction last year. So hopefully we'll find out that we'll get some grant money to help with those improvements. Okay. And George is not here, our Essex County liaison. So before we continue, we're just going to address Ms. Rosenberg for a moment. So at this year's dinner, which the Township Committee throws a dinner every year in the holiday season for its volunteers. And I noted that one of the things that sets America apart from so many other countries in the world is that we really are a nation of volunteers. Millburn Township is served and made better by the multitude of those who are willing to put their time, energy, themselves, not just monetarily, but to make this town a better place. And tonight, we are thanking Deputy Mayor Jody Rosenberg for her dedicated public service. Jody is ending her 3-year tenure on the Township Committee. She served the last 2 years as our Deputy Mayor. During her tenure on the Township Committee, she served on the Recreation Joint Fields Committee, on the Dispatch Joint Meeting, Cora Hartshorn Arboretum Board of Trustees, the Millburn Township Board of Health Community Service Award Committee, which she also served on prior to being a committee woman, a Board of Education liaison, DMDA liaison, and liaison to the Senior Citizens Advisory Board. Jody has been a thoughtful advocate for the residents of the town, and I am sure she will continue to engage in civic matters. I'm honored to have served with Jody, and I'm certainly honored to call her my friend. So for that, Jody, we really appreciate everything you've done for this town. Thank you. And we and for a very special assistant to Jody, for Sydney, who has come to many, many
So, thank you. As you know, I've lived in the township for 22 years and raised my 3 children here, Sydney being the youngest. She's 14, going on 44, as more engaged than anybody. I run a law firm on Main Street. I'm deeply rooted in the community. I never planned to be up here. I ran the work mom group for many years and got tapped by Mayor Haymoff when she departed. I've served for 33 years, which sometimes feels like 30, and sometimes has gone really fast. It's been really nice. I've learned so much. It broadened my work as a lawyer, as a mother, as a citizen in the town. I mean, there's so much that I've learned. I really have gotten so much, so thank you. Some of my favorite accomplishments were working with representatives of our township schools and our police department to ensure safe routes to school. I don't think Jen Duckworth's here, but reducing the speed limit on Wyoming was one of our best tasks. Most people don't know that we helped get geo-mapping in the high school, which means that when the police and fire, God forbid, have to go in there in an emergency, they have this high-tech equipment that the school board and the town shipped in for many years ago, and I was spearheading with that. Helped hire the judge, prosecutor, and public defender to make sure our courts work well. Advocated for more accountability from New Jersey Transit during the summer of hell and other times. And then the fun stuff. You get to do the ceremonial stuff, presiding over Eagle Scout promotions. I did over 20 weddings. Anyone want one tonight? Ribbon cutting ceremonies, dedicated a batting cage to a former township resident, Stephen Clark. So it's really been an honor, and I leave here with a lot of confidence in my abilities and my contributions. It was a contentious election, and no, it wasn't a mandate, but the people have made their decision. I will miss the audience members. I'll miss Phil, Janet, Carol, and your great words. I miss a lot of people who have been here for a long time, and the students who've gotten engaged, like Jamie and Jake, because that's really important. Sydney, I hope that you learn that it's important to step up and speak up, and it's really nice to see so many women on a board too, which you don't always see, and that it's not all white men standing up here. So if I did anything and taught you to be more engaged, I appreciate that. And then a tradition of a former President Bush, who has risen above the partisan politics, I'd like to offer these sentiments to the incoming committeewoman, Tara. I hope you feel the same sense of wonder and respect for this office as I do. There'll be tough times and harsh criticism, and you might not think it's always fair, but I wish you well. Your success will be our township's success, and I'll be rooting for you. Good luck. It says the Township of Millburn recognizes Jody L. Rosenberg for her breadth of services to the community, having served on the Millburn Township Committee from January 2016 through December 2018, as well as serving as deputy mayor in 2017 and 2018. On behalf of the Township of Millburn, we hereby thank you for your dedication and service. Thank you. You're welcome. Now back to business. All right, the next item on the agenda is the consent agenda resolutions. We have our bills list, authorized refund of tax overpayments, authorize the township to participate in the New Jersey Cooperative Purchasing Alliance CK04 Cooperative Pricing Agreement, authorize advertisement of bids for snow plowing services, authorize 1-year option number 2 extension of contract for plumbing services, authorize temporary change of hours for plenary retail distribution license holders, and that authorizes the retail sellers of alcoholic beverages to open earlier on Sunday before Christmas, this coming Sunday, at 9 a.m., right? 9 a.m. Okay, and the Sunday before New Year's. Authorize the application for New Jersey Historic Preservation Fund grant. Authorize the establishment of semi-annual business parking permit fee pursuant to provisions of the revised general ordinances. Are there any comments or questions from the committee?
I have one question.
Yes.
On Resolution 18269, just maybe share with the public what types of goods and services are in this New Jersey Cooperative Purchasing Alliance.
Jimmy, do you have what's being looked to purchase off of that co-op?
No, I believe this came out of the
finance CFO office or not?
Yeah, so we have to do this resolution to be able to purchase off of a co-op. I believe, I'm not exactly sure what the specific good is, but most of these contain, whether it's janitorial services or various services and goods. If you want, Committee Woman, I can certainly get you the exact good that we would be looking to get off of that.
But this is a plus for the town.
Of course, yeah, I mean, and we have to advertise when we are looking to purchase off these co-ops, and they generally get added to a resolution each time we add to a particular co-op.
Like I
But
know
we
we
belong
did,
to a couple.
like we did this for the plowing of the parking lot outside as part of the co-op.
Yes, we
Not
use
plowing,
it.
paving.
Yeah, we use the
Right.
co-op for quite a few things.
Right.
Again, whether it's purchasing a sewer camera or whether it's purchasing, having our plumbing services in town as a township are also off a co-op, so that's the thing.
Any other questions? Okay. Are there any comments from the public with respect to any of the items listed on the consent agenda? And this is consent agenda items only. Seeing none, hearing none, may I have a motion to approve the resolutions listed on the consent agenda?
Move resolutions 18-267 through 18-274.
May I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Levy?
Yes.
Ms. Newport?
Yes.
Ms. Rosenberg?
Yes.
Ms. Paul Eglo?
Yes.
Mayor Barsting?
Yes.
Thank you.
So we have a lot of second readings of ordinances tonight. And the first one is ordinance 2515-18. Mr. Levy.
2515-18. This ordinance is being proposed to authorize the acquisition of a drainage easement interest at 10 Heron Circle. We discussed this previously. This resolution has been carried for 2 meetings due to notice issues. It also is to instruct for a temporary construction easement in a portion of property located in that township on which to locate pipes and related flood control equipment underground. The installation of the pipes and equipment will allow the existing Gilbert Place stormwater pumping station to handle a higher volume of stormwater. It is a night set for the public hearing and final passage as advertised in accordance with the law.
I declare the hearing open. Are there any questions or comments with respect to this ordinance? And the hearing is open to the public. Should anybody like to speak as to this ordinance? Okay.
There's a request that the mayor close the hearing.
And
I move this public hearing be closed and ordinance be adopted on final reading. The township clerk be directed to publish the ordinance by title and passed on final reading in accordance with the law.
may I have a second?
Second. Mr. Levy?
Yes.
Ms. Newport?
Yes.
Ms. Rosenberg?
Yes.
Ms. Paul Eglo?
Yes.
Mayor Barsting?
Yes. Our next ordinance is 2516-18. Ms. Lieberberg.
Similar to the previously read ordinance, this is an ordinance authorizing the acquisition by purchase or condemnation of an easement interest in a portion of the real property located at 14 Haran Circle, known as Block 507, Lot 10. This ordinance is being proposed to authorize the acquisition of a rectangular shaped drainage easement interest, as well as a temporary construction easement in a portion of a property located in the township on which to locate pipes and related flood control equipment underground. The installation of the pipes and equipment will allow the existing Gilbert Place stormwater pumping station to handle a higher volume of stormwater. Tonight is the time set for the public hearing and final passage as advertised in accordance with law.
I declare the hearing open. Are there any comments or questions from the Township Committee with respect to this ordinance? Any comments from the public with respect to this ordinance?
I move that this public hearing be closed and the ordinance be adopted on final reading, and that the township clerk be directed to publish the ordinance by title as passed on the final reading in accordance with law.
May I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Levy?
Yes.
Ms. Newport?
Yes.
Ms. Rosenberg?
Yes.
Ms. Paul Eglo?
Yes.
Mayor Barsting?
Yes.
Thank you.
The next ordinance is 2517-18. Before I ask Ms. Eglo to proceed, it should be noted for the record that the planning board made a determination at its last meeting that this ordinance is not inconsistent with the master plan. Ms. Eglo?
It's good to go. Ordinance number 2517-18. An ordinance of the Township of Millburn, County of Essex, State of New Jersey, amending Article 6 of the Development Regulations and Zoning Ordinance of the Township of Millburn. The purpose of this ordinance is to allow for temporary fencing around the perimeter of properties where construction activities are occurring, in compliance with the requirements of the proposed revisions to Section 3-8 of Revised General Ordinances of the Township of Millburn, as an exception to Section 609.6 of the Development Regulations and Zoning Ordinance of the Township of Millburn. Temporary fencing during construction activity would be required in order to block the site of ground-level construction activity from neighboring properties and to mitigate the effects of dust and debris from leaving the property. This ordinance provides for an exception for the temporary fencing to Section 609.6. Tonight is the time set for the public hearing and final passage as advertised in accordance with law.
I declare the hearing open. Are there any questions or comments from the committee on this ordinance? Are there any questions or comments from the committee, from the public on this ordinance? Hearing none, seeing none.
I move that this public hearing be closed and the ordinance be adopted on final reading, and that the township clerk be directed to publish the ordinance by title as passed on the final reading in accordance with law.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Levy?
Yes.
Ms. Liebenberg?
Yes.
Ms. Rosenberg?
Yes.
Ms. Eglo?
Yes.
Yes. I present for consideration ordinance 2518-18. An ordinance of the Township of Millburn, County of Essex, State of New Jersey, amending Chapter 3 of the revised general ordinances of the Township of Millburn. The purpose of this ordinance is to provide appropriate standards and regulations for conducting construction activity within the suburban residential environment of Millburn Township. The ordinance establishes standards and limitations so as to promote sanitary and safe construction sites, mitigate adverse impacts on neighboring properties and residents, including from noise and dust, and to provide for the health and safety of the residents. Tonight is the time set for the public hearing and final passage as advertised in accordance with law. I declare the hearing open. Is there anyone at the committee who has questions or comments with respect to this ordinance?
I do. This has nothing to do with watering down or wetting down for asbestos, or does it?
Asbestos?
Just, you know, asbestos? Yeah,
This is, well,
this is for
for
wetting
the
down.
dust,
Yes.
yes, among other things.
Right. Because it doesn't say wetting down.
Well, no, but it's in the ordinance itself.
But that's so clear, somebody did email me about this, that would be required,
Well, yes, but,
yeah. And this would be published for her to see, correct?
correct, it's already been on the website,
Mhm.
because they want to, right.
Yeah, I don't think she saw it.
Oh, okay, but yes, it does contain the wedding down that we talked about.
Correct.
Yes. Okay,
Thank you.
you're welcome. Any questions or comments from the public? I move that this public hearing be closed and the ordinance be adopted on final reading, and that the township clerk be directed to publish the ordinance by title as passed on final reading in accordance with law. May I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Levy?
Yes.
Ms. Liebenberg?
Yes.
Ms. Rosenberg?
Yes.
Ms. Eglo?
Yes.
Ms. Kirsty?
Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Levy, 2519-18.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. 2519-18 is ordinance amending the Parks and Recreational Area revised ordinance for fees. We announced at the last meeting that certain fees in the township with regard to recreation will be increasing, mostly 5% or less, in some cases none. The purpose of the ordinance is for the township to revise the fee schedule for Millburn Township Rec Department programs. The increased fees are published in connection with this ordinance and were published last time and are self-explanatory. Tonight is the date and time set for the public hearing. Final passage is advertised and in accordance with law.
I declare the hearing open. Are there any questions or comments with respect to ordinance 2519-18? Are there any questions or comments from the public on ordinance 2519-18?
Mayor, I move that this public hearing be closed and the ordinance be adopted on final reading. The township clerk be directed to publish the ordinance by title as passed on final reading and in accordance with law.
May I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Levy?
Yes.
Ms. Lieber?
Yes.
Ms. Rosenberg?
Yes.
Ms. Paul Eckel?
Yes.
Mayor Barsky?
Yes.
Thank you.
Ordinance number 2520-18. I present for consideration an ordinance entitled Ordinance Number 2520-18, amending Chapter 7 Traffic of the Revised General Ordinances of the Township of Millburn. The proposed amendment to the traffic ordinance is intended to amend Chapter 7 Traffic as necessary to update traffic regulations for conformity throughout the section, to modify the parking and traffic regulations imposed throughout the township. Specifically, the ordinance modifies time limit restrictions on certain streets, clarifies parking meter zones, modifies where on-street permit parking is required, modifies where parking is prohibited and at which times, and creates residential parking zones and permitting requirements. Further, the ordinance inserts the locations of mid-block crossings, adds an area where trucks are excluded over a designated weight, adds a location where turning on red is prohibited, adds locations deemed as loading zones, updates the locations of bus stops, and modifies the parking restrictions and designation of township or Board of Ed parking lots. It updates the storage charge associated with storing a vehicle, modifies the permitting fee section, and modifies where parking is prohibited at the Essex Street Police Station driveways. Tonight is the time set for the public hearing and final passage is advertised in accordance with law. I declare the hearing open. Questions? Questions from the public? Comments from the public? I move that this public hearing be closed and the ordinance be adopted on final reading, and that the township clerk be directed to publish the ordinance by title as passed on final reading in accordance with law. May I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Levy?
Yes.
Ms. Lieber?
Yes.
Ms. Rosenberg?
Yes.
Ms. Paul Eckel?
Yes.
Mayor Barsky?
Yes. Ms. Rosenberg, ordinance 2521-18.
I present for consideration an ordinance entitled Ordinance Number 2521-18, amending and supplementing Chapter 7 Traffic, Section 720, stop intersections of the revised general ordinances of the Township of Millburn. This is the Hobart Highland one. This proposed amendment to the traffic ordinance is to authorize the installation of always stop signs at the intersection of Hobart and Highland Avenue. This always stop has been recommended by the Township of Millburn's traffic consultant, Mazer. This recommendation comes from concerns regarding the safety of the intersection after reviewing crash data, traffic counts, other relevant data. Tonight is the time set for the public hearing and final passage as advertised in accordance with law.
I declare the hearing open. So I'm going to take comments from the public before the committee speaks to it. So I'm sure that there's got to be at least one or two people here on this one. Feel free to come up, and I need you to identify yourself, your name, your address for the record, and your comments.
I'm Louis Goldberg. I live at 27 Inverness Court in Short Hills. And I walk for 15 years. I have walked, rain or shine, to and from the Short Hills train station from Inverness Court. And I have to cross that intersection every morning around 7:15 and anywhere from 6 p.m. at night to 8:30 at night. It is a dangerous intersection. I definitely support the idea of putting in a four-way stop, but my question to you is, are there going to be crosswalks to ensure for pedestrian safety? Also, are there going to be sidewalks going to and from the train station? Because as great as that crosswalk would be and as great as the stop signs would be, it is dangerous to walk down Hobart, across Highland, and then around the Crescent to the train station. And I don't understand why this is a half measure as opposed to ensuring pedestrian safety, because when you describe the ordinance as it's written, it does not take into account pedestrian safety, only the automobiles. Those are my comments.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to speak to this proposed ordinance?
Go ahead. No, keep going.
Hi, my name is Keith Compton, and I live at 15 Wells Lane here in Short Hills. And I would like to comment on the proposed four-way stop sign. I also walk to and from the train station, either vis-a-vis down Highland and or through Knollwood. So I'm familiar with both paths. I have two concerns that I'd like to surface today. One is that if there is a stop sign at the bottom of the hill, today there's stop signs on the Hobart side but not the Highland side. And to the extent that stop signs are erected on the Highland side, it will be a stop sign at the bottom of a hill, which in either snow or rainy conditions will present a hazard. And I'm concerned that it will actually increase the number of accidents because many cars travel at excessive speeds coming down that hill. And mind you, it is around a very difficult to see turn and then down the hill to a stop sign. Secondarily, there is room for maybe 3 or 4 cars before you back up to Wells Lane. And I believe the traffic studies have shown that there will be a significant amount of traffic redirect onto Wells Lane and subsequently onto Nolan. And as such, we will see a significant amount of redirected traffic that will direct into Wells, making a left onto Knollwood, and then making a left across another busy street. And we will see, again, busy traffic that is in a rush going through residential neighborhoods. And on Highland, on Wells and Knollwood, there are a large number of children that are typically playing in the streets, on the front yards, and you will have a lot of higher speed traffic being redirected onto the residential streets. So those are two concerns that I would like to surface. And the third is I would like to mention is that Lily Lee, one of the neighbors, has submitted some written information with regard to her assessment of these various items and has caused some concerns to be noted with regard to just the visibility of traffic that is going through those multiple turns on the redirect, the number of cars that would be caused to redirect, and also has noted that the measures that the township has taken over the course of the last 6 to 12 months have dramatically reduced the number of accidents that used to occur at that intersection. Thank you.
Guess I'll go.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Brett Rodriguez. I'm at 8 Wells Lane. So I wanted to follow up what Louis said and what Keith said. So I've been living in my house for 12 years, and I walk to the city. I walk to the train station twice a day. So I usually take between 6 and 7 a.m. the train in the morning, and the evening between 6 and 8:30. So I have just two concerns. I don't want to rehash what you have in an email, what they said, or what Keith said are very thorough. Concerns are, I think someone's going to get hurt if we don't create an action committee or something. I'll tell you that right now. Tonight, I know it gets dark around 4:45 or 5. Walking home, I do it every day between 6 and 8 depending on the evening. Their cars are going too fast. That's rule number 1. Up Highland, down Highland, and we have the stop signs on both Hobarts, and there are pedestrians walking. It creates somewhat of a chaos without any lights. I know, he brought it up, Miss Lee went to the committee and brought 2 stop signs, created 2 stop signs there with lights. So I know there were 5 accidents in 16 and 5 accidents in 17. In 2018, there's only been 1 accident. These are based on actual numbers, not fake news. Okay? That being said, that's progress, but I think we need to do more progress going forward You guys have all the information, all the emails, all the details. So that being said, as someone who's been walking up and down that street, and many neighbors are here on both sides of the room, some people on for the stop signs, some people against the stop signs. Me personally, I'm right now against the stop signs, a four-way stop sign. For where we have it now is good, but we need to do more research because there are too many cars coming down Highland like the Indy 500. Seriously, coming down to Highland, 17 Highland, which is the Becky's home, and then at Wells, you have the Seidel's home. It turns about 40 degrees in an incline, and the cars speed down. We have some options to do. We can either reduce the speed limits or create awareness by the Becky's home to say, slow down, because right now there's no sign there. The speed limit right now is 30 miles per hour. Maybe reduce that to 20 or 25 and get some awareness. That's number one, because cars are flying down Highland like if it was the Indy 500. I swear, one night you guys just have to walk from the station when it's dark and see what I see, and see what Lewis sees, and see what Key sees. Because, and some other guys, Donna does it, she does it every day or every few days. So honestly, you have to see it to believe it, because cars are flying down Highlands. If you put a four-way stop sign and there's snow or ice, and if there's a hill, there could be some issues. I'm no expert, but I see things, right? And I'm human. And I've been doing it for 12 years, and I see it evolve and getting worse and worse. So to sum all this up, we just need more homework, more diligence. We've already done it, but we need to do more things to create a sense of awareness and what's the best solution for everyone. Because what we're doing right now is not the best solution. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Brett Cohn. I live at 19 Wyndham Road. You've heard me speak before about this issue. I'm a big advocate of the four-way stop at that intersection. I've been living in that area for many, many years. I've witnessed lots and lots of accidents. The data does reflect the fact that there have been a significant number of accidents every year, and my understanding is that this may be the worst intersection in the township as far as accidents. And I think we're worried about accidents that could be fatal. We've had a fatality in town recently. I think it behooves all of us to think about what we can do to avoid the possibility of that happening, even if it's one accident. So, you know, the data that I have, assuming this is accurate, is in 2015 there were 5 accidents at intersection. 2016 there were 8 accidents at intersection. There were another 8 in 2017. In 2018 there's been 4 so far, although I'm not sure the data is up to date yet. So I don't know that you can infer much from the fact that there's only been a single accident in the second half of 2018, meaning the data statistically isn't going to tell us whether those things that we've done so far, which were kind of minimal in a way, you know, putting lights on the stop sign and cutting back a few trees, really made a big difference. My impression is they won't make a big difference in the end of the day. That's still inherent dangers in that intersection that can be resolved with adding 2 more stop signs. So I think that's it's not a perfect solution. It doesn't resolve all the concerns. I think there are plenty of concerns to be addressed. I don't think we should let perfect be the enemy of good. I think if we have the opportunity to improve an intersection, dangerous intersection in township, we should embrace that possibility. And frankly, I mean, you can't get, to my mind, you can't get any more low cost than adding 2 more stop signs to an intersection. And at the end of the day, if it turns out to be a problem and cause other unintended consequences, and then they can be ripped out. Or if it turns out that traffic's being directed to local roads that's causing problems on local roads, there are remedies for those problems that can be addressed after the fact. So again, I don't see it as a high risk proposition. The point about collisions down the bottom of a hill, as it is, people need to slow down to turn at that intersection. Most of the traffic's turning left, coming down the hill in Highland. So you know, the idea that there might be more accidents now because there's a stop sign, I just frankly doesn't seem to have any merit in my mind. So, and like I said, I think time is of the essence. I think we really should. We've been debating this topic for many months. I know it's come up in my discussions with folks for years now, and I think it's time to move on. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, good evening. I'm Kevin O'Halloran. I reside at 17 Highland, second house up off of the intersection of Highland and Hobart. I'm not going to rehash what everyone has clearly expressed here. I think they've touched on all the points that I'd like to speak to. The only thing I will say is to piggyback off what Mr. Rodriguez said. I actually walked to that train in years past when I used to commute to the city every day. And when I work at home now, a day or two a week, I can look out the window, and even without the stop signs, there are cars and buses backed up if a car is stopping at that intersection now to make a left from Highland going southbound onto Hobart. A stop sign, I think we're all for safety. That is an intersection where accidents, it obviously has happened year over year. The only thing I would like to add is, in addition to the stop signs on Hobart where they installed the blinking lights, they cut down a tree in front of 15 Highland. They trimmed the trees in front of my own home at 17 Highland for the visibility to be better. There's a sign right in front of my house that actually has, it's old, it's dirty, but it actually has a warning to tell you to slow down, there's a curve ahead. I've called in years past to get that replaced to just to be an extra set for drivers to see to slow down. I've called in the past, it hasn't been replaced. The only thing I would say is if that was replaced, it would only help with the blinking stop signs, the trees that have been cut down, and I think it would only make sense, in my humble opinion, to look at that data after what's been done in May and June with the trees and the blinking stop signs in September, and look at that data in the coming year to look to see if in fact it has helped, because folks are walking on that street, and if there's inclement weather, it's backed up now without a stop sign. And it may not reduce the number of accidents at that intersection, but pedestrians are going to be put in harm's way. They will. There are parents with strollers, with infants on Highland. So I'd like that sign replaced in front of my home because it can only help. And I honestly think that we should just wait the 3 to 6 months, 12 months, whatever it is, and look at that data before installing the signs. We're all for safety. But at this point, I am against the four-way stop signs. Thank you.
You'll just come up and we'll take turns.
Hi, Melissa Goldberg, 27 Inverness Court. You already heard from my husband, who basically walks that intersection. I walk it and I drive it, so I see it both ways. It is a very unsafe intersection. One is that I'm all for the four-way stop, but it needs to have pedestrian safety. You guys passed Complete Streets in 2014, and that is supposed to be a holistic program that includes pedestrian safety. This is not including pedestrian safety. I don't think there was, and I don't know if the engineer can say, if there was going to be crosswalks painted.
We'll address that in a minute.
Oh, you'll address, okay. So, I mean, I think it's really important that there's crosswalks. I think, though, one dangerous thing would be for the pedestrians who are walking on the Crescent towards the train station as the cars back up. There literally is no place for them to walk, so they have to step out in the street, so there may be something that needs to be adjusted for those people. But talking about the cars speeding down the hill to get to the stop, people have to stop there anyway to turn left. So it makes like a stop sign or no stop sign, they're stopping. So in the winter, in the summer or whatever, so if it's icy, they're still stopping. So, and if there's strollers and people walking, it's the same thing. It's only going to make it safer to have a four-way stop there than not to. But I think that in addition to this, there needs to be a much more holistic program with sidewalks. Alex knows I've been pushing and pushing for sidewalks on Hobart. The pedestrians have to walk with their phones on at night down the street so they don't get hit by a car because they're in the middle of Hobart walking home from the train. So again, I'm for this four-way stop sign.
Thank you.
Hi, good evening. Happy holidays to everyone. My name is Jerry Marola. I reside with my wife Donna at 16 Highland Avenue. I don't think anyone has a better vantage point than I do. I'm sitting in the corner of the two streets diagonal from the tennis courts. I have a circular drive that emits out into Hobart and to Highland. I've been there for 16 years, 10 years prior on Great Oak Drive. I can share with you that when we bought the house in 2002, I knew that Highland was a through street. There's a flow to Highland. Highland has way more volume on it than the traffic report seems to indicate. No disrespect to the report that was done, but I spend an inordinate amount of my time outside of my home. Any of you that have driven down that street have probably seen me out there gardening or painting or doing something. The fact of the matter is I've witnessed probably more than half of the events that have taken place at the intersection itself. I can tell you firsthand from driving down that road to my house every day, the largest issue that was created was the lack of visibility for Hobart cars trying to cross Highland. They frankly couldn't see. I couldn't see. Removing some of the foliage helped the situation tremendously, but I can say this to you. If we disrupt the flow on Highland, which is far heavier than anyone realizes, and I encourage any of you to share a cup of coffee with me on my front steps, if you disrupt that flow, I can almost assure you that that traffic is going to end up in three places. It's going to end up on Wells, Gapview, and the Crescent. And the reason is simple. Traffic is a lot like water, right? It chooses the path of least resistance. And the fact of the matter is that the train station guides traffic on Highland. The train station and the middle school. The traffic study was an interesting document, but at the end of the day, the traffic study on Highland really needed to consider the train times. Because I'm the guy sitting out there every day. I can tell you when the cars come down that street. The cars are not going to stack 8 or 10 deep. The cars are going to stack 25 deep. Because there is no way that individuals driving cars today can navigate a 4-way stop sign. Most people can't navigate a 2-way stop sign. So the fact of the matter is when you put people in that situation, commuting to a New York train, bringing their kids to school, trying to figure out who's going first, we're disrupting the flow, a flow that was meant to be a flow of a through road. And I live on it, so I respect the fact that it's a through road. Keep one other thing in mind on a personal level. I currently cannot get out of my Hobart driveway. It's not possible because the traffic backs up on that road. I now won't be able to get out of my Highland driveway because the traffic will back up on that road. So now basically I have to stay home. In summary, I will say to you that I believe 4 stop signs, while I'm all for safety and I'm absolutely all for reducing speeds, I think we're creating another set of risks here. We're creating confusion for people that are driving. And I can tell you firsthand, because I've been the guy outside helping motorists that are stuck on that hill in inclement weather, this is going to create an issue for people coming southbound on Highland trying to deal with that stop on a regular basis. We're going to create a whole nother set of accidents. And again, I think this committee should actually watch it first before we put something in place that creates yet another circumstance. I thank you for your time.
Good evening. My name is Kathy Hay. I've been a township resident for over 22 years, 10 years on Crescent Place, and 12 years on Inverness Court. Not only did I commute and walk to the train for many years while on Crescent, but I have driven my kids to school both down in the direction of the train station and up Highland. And a few people have said some noteworthy things. I want to say up front, I'm actually very much in favor of the 4-way stop. As Brett mentioned, I'm not quite sure why, if it's icy and snowy, it's going to make it harder to stop at the stop sign. I mean, if you're flying down, you're going to be more likely to have an accident than if you don't think there's a stop sign. But the point was made about the train schedule and the school schedule. Now, every day I drive my son to a shuttle bus to go to school, and I go up Highland. And what happens is you have people who are driving their kids to the middle school, to the high school, and trying to make that 7:29 train or whatever it is. And what happens is, because the people coming down Highland know very well that the only people that have to stop are the ones on Hobart, it creates a game of chicken. Because they know if they get a head of steam coming down, there's no way those people are going to try to jump out. On the other hand, there are people who know they may miss their train. And so what happens is they're like, okay, I think I'm going to go for it. And then you've got these people flying down Highland and people trying to turn left in front of the tennis courts. And it's like, I mean, every day I witness this. Then, after I drop my son at the shuttle bus, I come back down Highland and I feel like, okay, I'm going to be a good Samaritan today. I'm going to stop and let some of these people go because it's just incredible, the volume of traffic, as people have said. In short, I can't see why a four-way people, hey, if you've passed your driving test, you know how to handle a four-way stop. You take turns. And if you know there's a stop, then you're going to slow down when you're coming down the hill. I understand getting out of your driveway. On the other hand, if you live on the right side of the road going up, you'll be able to get out of your driveway only one way, only if you're behind the stop sign. If you're in front of the stop sign, it wouldn't be an issue. I mean, nobody wants more stop signs, but I can tell you, over 22 years, I know some of the people have gotten in the accidents. I've seen the accidents, and the speed, I just don't see how lowering the speed limit, I mean, they're ignoring the speed limit now. I just don't see that. People, unfortunately, they all have somewhere to be, and I think a stop sign is the best solution, so good luck with your decision.
Hi, my name is Jim Sammartino, and I reside at 15 Highland Avenue. I'm on the corner of Highland and Hobart with my wife Nancy. We've been there 23 years. We've seen numerous accidents. One of the things I do want to say is that I think the problem lies in the fact that it emanates at the top of the hill. And we've heard it. People come racing down the hill. There should be a speed bump. There should be more of a deterrent at the top of the hill so you meet the problem at the beginning of where it is rather than creating more stop signs down at the bottom of the hill. I think that, you know what, if you can address it and kind of at least get people more aware of the fact, then when they get to the bottom of the hill, whether there's a stop sign or there isn't a stop sign, they'll at least have the ability to stop. If you put a stop sign, there's going to be more accidents. If you don't, there are going to be more accidents. But my question is, we really need to put a speed bump or something at the top of the hill where the speed starts to pick up. I thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else want to speak to this?
Carrie Strasbury, I live nowhere near this intersection, but everybody in this situation. I was just hoping that we could learn from the experience that we had at the five-way stop at Taylor Park when that stop sign went in, because you would stop on Parkview, but the people behind you wouldn't. And there were very many near misses when that was first implemented. So I wonder if there's any signage of stop sign ahead when you're coming down on Highland, or stop sign ahead when you're coming up Highland, or maybe they're all blinky stop signs, and maybe we have some police enforcement near that area when this first gets implemented, because this may eventually make it a safer intersection, but I truly believe that in the immediate, it will make it a more dangerous intersection where I stop at the stop sign and the person doing 50 down Highland doesn't. So I'm just wondering if you have in the works, and you could tell us, any other safety measures that will go along with these additional stop signs.
Good evening, everyone. I know you've already heard from my husband. I've lived in Short Hills since I'm 7, so I've been here forever. I just want to reiterate one thing. I'm all for safety. I walk to the train. I easily get close to getting run over once a week, but I'm still here. It's all good. But the bigger issue is, I think four-way stop signs are great in low-volume areas. The traffic study that's been done is giving a quantity of cars coming through each side of the intersection, but I'm not so sure it mentions how intense that volume is at the peak times that we're talking about. I can tell you when I'm coming through that intersection some mornings, I have a hard time getting through because someone's motioning me to go, someone else isn't letting me go, and I almost get in accidents when people are trying to be good Samaritans, as somebody else mentioned. There are too many cars in that intersection for a four-way stop sign to make sense. Someone has to have a right-of-way. The township put a stop sign when Short Hills Avenue comes up and turns into Crescent by the Rackets Club. As you cross that last little pedestrian crosswalk to get to the green, to go to the train. Guess what? No one stops there. It's ridiculous. Nobody follows that stop sign. My recommendation would be, let's continue the study. We've seen improvements since we put the blinking stop signs and we have trim shrubs. My second recommendation might be, we have a lovely new police officer that's joined our force. How about some speed traps? How about giving out some tickets to people that don't follow the speed limits, that don't stop at the stop signs? I am sure we could make more than enough revenue to pay for that guy's salary and give him a bonus. Honestly, let's do that first. Please, I'm begging you, let's revisit this in 6 months. I'm fearful that that four-way stop, because of the volume, will create more accidents rather than solve them. It's just too confusing. Thank you so much and happy holidays.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Good evening. My name is Sonia Lizano Halloran. I live at 17 Highland Avenue. I am Kevin O'Halloran's wife. And the only thing that I want to add, I obviously second my husband's what he already said, is just that the blinking light, it was working at the beginning, but I don't think it's working. So if that's one of the steps that you've taken to alleviate the problem, it's not consistent. That's
I'm Stephanie Marios. I live in Short Hills. I want to thank you all for attending to this important conversation and for taking the time to really evaluate the issue. And I also appreciate everyone's service. It's a very hard job that you're doing. I'm grateful that you're doing it and I'm not. So my son was in a car accident at that intersection. He was a passenger. His babysitter, who was from California, was driving the car. And it was completely shocking to her that it wasn't a four-way stop sign. Because in California, of course, it would be, and it would have all these giant flashing lights pointing to the crosswalks, et cetera, et cetera. This was a number of years ago. We're members of the Rackets Club, and I will not allow my 13-year-old to walk to the club. We live 3 blocks away. There's no way he can get there safely, and even riding his bike, walking with friends, we don't allow it. That's really sad and frankly pathetic. I don't live on Highland, I don't live on Wells. We're all friends and neighbors here, and I feel for everybody's particular position. I don't know what the answer is, but I do remember when we installed 3-way stop sign at Glen Avenue at Lackawanna, and there was huge uproar about how that was going to totally blow away everybody. There's so much traffic there, there's so many cars, the people won't stop, people are speeding on Glen, let's put speed bumps in, et cetera, et cetera. But from what I can see, having 3 stop signs at that intersection has been very, very helpful for traffic. Perhaps you can speak to it because you're on the rescue squad, but it seems like change is hard for everybody, but once you get over the change part, the long-term goals are what we're looking for. The other thing I will also say is because most people now drive an SUV, they don't understand what the velocity means when they're going down a hill. And 30 miles an hour is way too fast. The speed limit for that location, I would say most people are doing closer to 50. So some enforcement and changing of the signs would be appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public who wishes to speak on this issue?
Good evening, everyone.
So just so everybody knows, do you want to just introduce yourself?
Yes, Maurice Rached, that's R-A-C-H-E-D. I'm a traffic engineer. I've been doing traffic work in Millburn for many, many years. It goes back to the 80s, actually, when I used to work for NJDOT. Essex County was one of the counties that I took care of, so I used to come up here to do speed limits, stop signs, and the rest. I work with Major Consulting, and I've been hired by the township to provide you with consulting as far as traffic engineering and traffic regulations. Well, you have a I'm not sure it's a tougher job, whether it's you or me. I think you have a tougher job than me tonight. But my job is not easy either. Let me start by, I took a lot of notes, and I really appreciate all your comments. Let me start with the easy stuff. Speed humps. We actually looked at that. State statute doesn't allow speed humps when the roadway carries more than 3,000 vehicles per day. And this road does. So I think speed humps are by law out of the question in here. So I wanted to get that out of the way. Let's talk about what we did first and how we did it. Let me stand here this way I'm going to try to face everyone if I can. So as you know, we've been working on this for a couple of months. We took counts, the police department took counts. I've been out there personally many, many times at the intersection. And what we did is two things. One, we looked at it from a regulatory perspective, based on the law, based on national standards. And then we did a study to also look at it from an operational perspective. What's going to happen if we put the stop signs, or if we do a four-way stop, that is, versus a two-way stop. So from a standards perspective, I said regulatory, I actually meant from a perspective of standards, engineering standards. There are standards that we must follow by law. And these standards are in a book called the Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices, MUTCD. And these standards tell you when do you put a stop sign, when do you put a four-way stop sign, and when do you put a traffic signal. So when we look at these standards, the four-way stop sign is justified. And I think that's big, and that's very important. It's important to me, it's important to the township. These standards say that, or one of the warrants in that standard say that if you have more than 5 accidents per year, that is justification for a four-way stop. Now, I understand what's going on with the accident records. And just to summarize the numbers for you quickly, we have in 2015, 5 accidents. In 2016, 8, 17, 8, and in 18, 4. So one would argue, well, wait a minute, there was an improvement here. We have only 4 accidents in 2018, so let's stop. Well, there are 2 issues with doing that. We already have a good record of accidents that far exceed the minimum threshold to put a four-way stop. But also, if one year the accidents were too high or too low, we can't use that as a reason to make a decision. Our decision must be based on 3 or 4 years. And when you look at it in that perspective, the accident history does justify the four-way stop. Then you may say, well, what if? And I think you make a very good point. What if putting the lights, improving the vegetation, really is helping? And next year we're going to have only 4 and 3, and there may be none. The problem with that argument is that there are physical constraints that don't meet the standards at the intersection, regardless of what we do with the vegetation. Now, I don't want to get too scientific, but just to let you know, for a roadway like Highland, the intersection side distance needs to be 385 feet. That means if you stop at Hobart and you look to the right, you look to the left, you need to see 385 feet of unencumbered distance. That means you need to see, plain and simple, 385 feet. You don't have that distance, and that's if you're going on Hobart towards the station, and you look to the right along the uphill, that is, on Highland, there is a physical geometric constraint in the roadway that is preventing the driver from seeing 385 feet. So no matter what we do, we're not going to address that unless we fix the road, unless we fix the vertical and the horizontal geometry in the road, which we can't do right now, and we can never do probably. So that's what really concerns me. Now, regarding introducing a hazard, which is a very good point, by the way, when you put a stop sign, you introduce a hazard. When you put a traffic signal, you introduce a hazard. Well, there are two things here. We need to weigh what we're introducing versus what we're treating, what we're mitigating. But also, we need to look at some facts. In New Jersey, the law says anytime you have an intersection, by statute you have a crossing area, you have a crosswalk. Whether it's marked or unmarked, whether there is a stop sign or not, there is a crosswalk. So if you're walking along Highland, or along, in this case would be along Hobart, the law says if you're on that sidewalk, you can cross Highland because you have a crosswalk. You have a statutory crosswalk. Whether it's marked or not, it doesn't matter. Which means that, and by the way, the law in New Jersey changed a few years ago. Now, if you step or if you make a motion that you want to cross, cars have to stop. And I think this is very, very critical here. So that, well, I understand some of you are laughing, but that's the law and that's what we should be doing. So that tells us that cars need to stop very often going down Hobart. They need to stop for pedestrians, they need to stop to make turns, which some of you have indicated. In terms of pedestrian safety, one of you asked if we're installing crosswalks. The answer is yes, but not yet, and I'll tell you why not yet. We need to comply, among other things, with ADA, American with Disabilities Act, and that's a federal law. And this law says that anytime you improve or change a pedestrian path, you have to comply. And in this case, compliance means we have to put the ramps. So we have to do physical work, and that's going to take some time. Unlike putting a sign, when you change a sidewalk and a curb, it takes a little bit more. So it's coming, but not immediately. Let me address the cut-through. I looked at that actually very carefully, and let me start by telling you what is my opinion, and then I'll give you the facts. There will be no cut-through through wells. I mean, occasionally you may have one person, and I'll tell you why. And I've been doing this for 31 years, by the way, folks. So I've done many of these situations. So if you take measurements from the intersection of Wells and Highland to the train station, it's 1,450 feet. If you take measurements going through Wells and down Norwood, it's 2,350 feet. And it introduces more turns. You have to make a turn on, obviously, on Wells to get on it, then you have to make a left turn on Norwood, and then you have to make another left turn on Hobart to get to the train station. So not only it is, I didn't do the exact math, but I think at least 50% more in distance, but it's circuitous and it's very inconvenient. So in my opinion, I see no reason whatsoever to, for anyone to do a cut-through. Some of you refer to it as a redirect. Actually, one of you, when speaking about the redirect, mentioned that there were multiple turns in the redirect. That's why the redirect will not happen. It's all a matter of convenience. And one of you said traffic is like water. That's true. When it's less convenient, people don't do it. Let's talk about peak hours. We do understand the peak hours, and that's why instead of using the 7 to 9 and 4 to 6, we used 6 to 8 and 5 to 7. And we did find that the peak hour in this area is earlier than usual in the morning and later than usual in the afternoon. So we did capture that. And we know we captured it because in the data we received, there was a peak in the middle of the data, not at the beginning or the end. So we know we got the beginning of it and the end of it. So we did some analysis, and we we did a capacity analysis to the intersection, and we found that under the existing conditions, delay at the intersection could be as high as 207 seconds per vehicle. Let me make sure, 205, I'm sorry, 205. With the four-way stop, the highest delay that would be experienced would be 67 seconds. So it would be really an improvement. And then some of you commented that there is a lot of traffic at this intersection for a four-way stop. Well, a four-way stop is part of a hierarchy. So when you have no traffic at all, very little traffic, you don't need any control. When you have some traffic, you put a two-way stop. When traffic increases, you put a four-way stop. When it increases further, you put a traffic signal. So it's part of that hierarchy. Putting a four-way stop is actually a treatment for having additional traffic. And the NUTCD actually says if a traffic signal is warranted and it cannot be done because of funding or other reasons, you put a four-way stop in the meantime, because it services traffic, and as somebody said here tonight, you alternate as you come in. So it gives you a very orderly traffic flow. Now going back to the safety issue of putting a stop downhill, I did mention that people do stop anyway for the reasons I mentioned a couple of minutes ago. But we will have not only a stop sign ahead, but also markings alerting drivers on Highland that there is a stopping condition coming up. And the other thing I wanted to mention is that the township is working on a more comprehensive solution for pedestrian safety, but we're doing one thing at a time for practical reasons. I mean, so some of the improvements, such as sidewalks, involve right-of-way, sometimes even drainage, and it's more complicated than we would like. So that is coming. And with that, Mayor, that's what I have. That's what I meant to say.
I understand there are questions, so we'll start at the left. Mr. Reedy, your question?
Yeah, as I understood your presentation, a four-way stop will create a 60-second delay among those who converge at the four-way stop themselves and negotiate their...
What I was giving you is the highest delay
Right.
for the highest approach. So today, the highest is 205. With the four-way stop, the highest would be 67.6 to be exact.
Okay, 67 seconds.
Yeah.
So my question is, was that at peak time?
Yes, that is the highest speed.
And some of the residents commented about backup, that stacking could go, as in their observation, as many as 20 cars deep. I don't know if you addressed that.
We did, and we found that the stacking on Highland may go, again, this is the science. When I say 5.9, don't laugh at me, but that's the queue. What it means somewhere between 4 and 6 vehicles, or 4 and 7. But the maximum queue during the peak time that we found when we modeled not the existing is much higher, by the way, but when we modeled the intersection was 5.9 vehicles. Let's say 6 or 7.
Just so I'm clear, and I understand that some people may disagree with you, but your modeling shows that at peak time, the stacking will be no more than 6 cars.
That's correct. Yep. And scientifically, we call that the 91st percentile. That's the queue that has a 5% chance of occurring in the peak hour.
Does the public have a chance to speak now, or to question?
Not at the moment.
Okay.
Okay.
Hi, thank you for coming out, everybody. No way everyone's going to be happy, but I have a couple of things.
Sure.
People do not understand 3- or 4-way stop signs. We see this all the time in South Mountain at the 5-way. We see this at the library. There's always that person who's going to sneak up on somebody else's chance. Happens all the time. We talk about this. They should understand it, but they don't. Are they too impatient, or they just don't want to stop? The data shows that most cars turn left, or is that the assumption? People coming down from Highland, most cars turn left?
Well, I have all the counts here, so in the AM peak hour, that's the highest, 94 make a right, 284 go straight through, and 4 make a left.
So most of the cars are not making a left coming down Highland.
That is correct. Now, going the other way on
They're going
Highland,
straight. Most of them are going
yeah,
straight.
going in the other direction on Highland, 67 make a left, 214 goes through, and 19 make a right.
Yeah, but they're not the problem. The problem is...
I understood. I just
Right.
wanted to give you the...
Okay,
yeah.
so most cars are going straight. As somebody said, it's a through street. It's always been. And if 3,000 cars is considered too high for a speed bump, which I am personally in favor of speed bumps, how can it then be not too many cars for a stop sign? And if the site conditions have changed and we know there have been less accidents, why are we not waiting for the proper data to come in after the conditions have been changed? And there's still some conditions that can be changed by removing some more vegetation. But if you have to wait to put in the ADA compliant pedestrian crosswalks, why can't you wait and make this, as somebody said, a holistic plan altogether? I think you can justify anything with numbers for the result you want to give people. And I also will not go with the argument that cut through will not happen because it's 200 feet more. Because we know in South Mountain,
No, it's much more than 200 feet.
it doesn't matter. Well, no, I'm saying the cut through from Washington and South Mountain is much more complicated turning through Washington and South Mountain to get out to Vauxhall, because people don't want to go through the traffic coming down Millburn Avenue or going up Main Street. So people are not going to be deterred because it's a few more turns and it's however many more feet. I think we really have to wait and get the data and really make sure you're making...
He has the data.
No, I'm asking, like, can we wait for the data?
What data? He has the data.
So,
Right now, it's not for the public comment, thank you.
and that's why we all have to drop tonight, because yes, there could be a solution to wait. But here's why, as your engineer, I would recommend that you do not wait, because we have some facts. And one of them is that you don't have the required site distance. That's a fact. I cannot change that. Nobody can change that.
And you told Mr. Bowers then at that meeting that you did not have the site to put a stop sign there. So I was confused why all of a sudden you had put a stop sign there.
You know, that's why you need, putting the stop sign eliminates the need for site distance. So when you're driving on Hobart and you get to the stop sign, you need to make a decision. Do I cross or not?
Right.
And to make that decision, you need to see whether there's a vehicle coming or not. And based on the standards, that distance should be 385 feet. We don't have that. Now, once we stop vehicle on Highland, you don't need to make the decisions, because when you come to the stop sign, the other vehicles are there, and then you alternate or you make a decision whether to cross or not without any need for a site distance. So it kind of obviates the need, it eliminates the need for a site distance.
And so you're saying the people coming down Highland will have the site distance and time to stop and see that stop sign?
That's another issue, yes.
Yes, they will?
Yes, they will.
You say so.
They were answered.
I have a couple of questions. One is you said that there's improved, the delay will be improved from 200 some odd seconds to 60 plus seconds, right? Can you just explain why?
Yes. So today, the delay is experienced on Hobart. And Highland has no delay, unless somebody's making a left turn. They wait a little bit for opposing traffic to stop and make a left turn. And the delay is excessive on Hobart because they have a stop sign, and the other approach, the conflicting approach, doesn't stop. So they have to wait until there is a gap in traffic. So they experience the 205 seconds during peak hour. Now, when we do it into a four-way stop, that same person who was waiting potentially 205 seconds doesn't have to wait that many seconds anymore because the other side is stopping and now there's more gaps for the traffic to flow. However, I want to make sure that everybody understands, now there is some delay for traffic on Highland, of course, because now we're putting a stop sign. But overall, it's an improvement.
And same question with respect to stacking. You talked about a reduced stacking as well. Can you explain that?
Yeah, for the same reason. Right now, I don't have the stacking, the existing stacking on that we experience on Hobart. But if you ask me to guess, I'm going to say maybe there could be up to 10 vehicles or more. So that stacking is going to diminish for the same reason. So if you're on Hobart and you get to the intersection, you don't have to wait for a gap. Now everybody else stops. So that stacking has a better opportunity to enter the intersection and go through. That's why the stacking will diminish. But again, so we understand there'll be stacking now on Highland, which in my opinion, when you look at the overall picture, it's a good compromise. So we're spreading the delay and we're spreading the stacking. So we're helping, one way to put it, we're helping traffic on Hobart at the expense of traffic on Highland, but at the same time we're improving vehicular safety and pedestrian safety.
Thank you. Okay. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
As a township committee, we're charged with representing the interests of the residents as portrayed to us. But we're also charged with protecting public safety, no matter what form that is. Do you have a professional opinion whether both pedestrian and vehicle safety will be protected and better advanced with or without the 4 stop signs?
That's an easy question for me to answer. The answer is yes. The 4-way stop will definitely improve the safety of pedestrians and the safety of vehicular traffic, no question about it.
And is it your professional opinion as well that this is not an exclusive remedy for this problem, for the safety concerns at this intersection? If the 4-way stops prove to be less efficient or productive, based on your modeling, other remedies could be injected into that area based on studies, correct?
Absolutely, and that's the intent of the township. This is one solution as part of many. And it could be also monitored and revised, improved, changed as necessary.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can you just wait a little bit, because I think that there are some members of the public who...
Do you have a question just with regards to the data? I'm sorry, sir.
Maurice?
Could you just clarify for me, when you did the
Well,
data
you know,
analysis?
would you identify?
Oh, I'm sorry, Donna Marola, my apologies.
Straight.
Hi,
Thank you.
sorry about that. The number of cars that were counted on the Hobart, going through Hobart versus Highland.
Yes.
Do you have those numbers?
Yes, I have any number you want.
I would
Tell
love to
me
know
what-
the number of cars that are counted traveling on Hobart versus the number of counted traveling on Highland.
And is this peak time?
Pardon me?
So,
Peak time?
Peak time, yes, thank you, Brett.
so on Highland, I'm going to add up roughly. In the morning peak, you have close to 300 going towards the train station. Going in the other direction, you have approximately also about the same number. On Hobart, going northbound, you have about 100 in the AM and about 170 in the PM. In the other direction, on Hobart, you have about 165 in the AM and about the same number in the PM.
So just so I'm clear, we're making a conclusion, taking the AM peak as an example. The 265 cars traveling on average on Hobart, and then roughly 600 or so traveling on Highland, we believe adding another 600 cars into a stopping queue is actually going to improve flow rather than inhibit it. I find that very
Yes.
difficult to believe.
Yes.
You're quadrupling the number of cars being
No,
forced
we're
to
not
stop.
changing the number of cars.
Actually,
We're-
you are. You have
we're-
165, and now you're saying we're going to add 600 more traveling up and down Highland, adding to a stop queue. I struggle to see how that doesn't create
Okay, I see
tremendous
what you mean. You
confusion
mean we're adding a
and
number
making it
of...
more difficult to pedestrians. I struggle.
Stops, not cars.
Stop, yes, thank you.
Yeah, you're adding 600 people stopping. I struggle.
That
to
is correct,
understand
but
that.
that's the whole idea. That's how you bring safety by...
How about people follow the speed limit? Have we, I run the
Allow me to
list.
answer,
Go
please.
ahead, go ahead.
That's the whole reason behind it. The reason behind this is to stop people, to reduce speed, and to provide pedestrian opportunity to cross safely.
So I'm going to ask you one more question with regards to your recommendation. I understand it's coming from some very statistical data. I've lived in this town since I'm 7 years old. And we won't say how old I am, but it's been quite some time. And that has always been a stop sign there. I agree with what a lot of other people have cited. The speeding that occurs is really the issue. So I understand that the thought would be you make someone come to a stop, that will slow them down, and I understand the proposed logic. But what I fail to understand is why the township first isn't taking stricter measures to enforce people driving the speed limit in this town through the main arteries of the community to improve safety for everyone. To me, that should be the first stopgap and allow us to calm down, slow down, and drive appropriately, then assess if that four-way stop is necessary. And as I
They
said
do,
earlier,
and actually the police did that. The police did a lot of work at this intersection for a couple of years.
I
And,
live in this town. and
That's not the case.
and, you know, again, this is not something I studied, but...
This is not a round table, people. Let's just ask questions, let the engineer respond, and we're gonna move on. So we
May I
can
ask my
finish
last
our...
question, since you raised this answer? If there's been data done, can someone show us the number of speeding fines that have been applied at that intersection or for people speeding down Highland in the past 6 to 12 months? As we're coming to this conclusion of this study, we are stating that work's been done, but no one has stated that law enforcement has increased their monitoring, that we have now increased our tickets, we have curtailed speeding. I haven't heard anything from that angle to take another proactive approach to improve the safety of this intersection.
Mayor, I'm not qualified to answer it. However, what I can say is, from experience, I know that enforcement helps temporarily, and when it stops, the speeding comes back. So that I could tell you.
Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm
Name?
Kevin O'Halloran
Yeah.
from Highland Avenue. I just had a question I may have misunderstood. The number of feet you said from the intersection to Wells was how many feet?
No, I did not talk about the feet from the
Oh, I said when
intersection
you
to
were
Wells.
talking about the cut-through, that there was, you gave me a measure, or you mentioned, I thought, a measurement from the intersection up to Wells. And I thought
Oh,
you said
no.
1,000.
What I measured
change.
is the difference between going from the intersection of Wells and Highland to the train station, using the intersection of Hobart and Highland versus using Wells and Norwood. So when you do the two measurements, one is approximately 1450 and the other one is approximately 2350.
Okay, and your estimate on one or two cars, and I'm not going to speak for the neighbors on Wells, but your estimate on one or two cars using Wells as a cut-through because of the stagger. I mean, if folks are waiting to bring their children to school or trying to make a train, you don't think that there's a possibility that it's going to be a lot greater, the one or two cars going on Wells to try and make a train?
I don't.
Okay.
I don't.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Right here.
Thank you.
I know,
he has hand up before.
just one question.
Thank you.
If we put the stop
Name-
sign...
name,
Oh, I'm sorry,
street.
Louis Goldberg, 27 Inverness Court. If we put the stop sign in, is it permanent, or if we hate it, can we remove it?
I wouldn't use the word hate it, but if it doesn't work, yes, it could be reversed.
Oh, thank you.
Sir?
Jerry Marola, Highland Avenue. Sir, just to clarify, did you mention earlier that the count on Highland is too large for a speed bump?
Number
Yes.
of cars.
Based on the number of cars?
That's correct.
That a speed bump's not permitted?
Yes.
Can you help me understand then how we have a speed bump on White Oak Ridge Road?
I didn't look at that. I can't answer that question.
But you've worked in the township for how many years?
A few years, but I don't have the data in front of me.
So we don't know whether White Oak Ridge Road has a higher car count than Highland?
I mean, tonight I came here prepared to discuss Highland, not the other roadways.
Are you familiar with the speed bump on?
Yeah, yeah, I am. Yeah.
Excuse me, the White Oak County Road?
That's the clarification I'm trying to understand, why we have it.
Deborah Nevis,
Once you come to
Can
the
you just make
podium.
it louder? Sorry, Deborah.
Deborah Nevis, 65 Nolan Road. Question, I'm for anything that's going to bring safety to that intersection. My question is about if you're coming up Highland and you're going to be making a left onto Wells, and you're past the stop sign and the traffic is backing up, is stacking up, coming down Wells. How can we ensure that it's going to be doable to make that left turn if there are 5 or 6 cars backed up? Is there a way to ensure that people sort of don't block the box so that you can easily make a left turn onto Wells Lane?
Yeah, that's a good question, and that the analysis shows that that's not going to happen. But if it does happen, we need to treat it. We need to mitigate that condition by either putting a sign, putting not block the box, or something else. But that's something that needs to be monitored.
Did you check to see how many cars actually make the left onto Wells going north on Highland?
We did not do a count on Wells proper, no.
Any other, Lynn?
Lynn Ranieri, 94 Oakview Terrace. If a four-way stop goes into that intersection, what measures do you have to help educate people on how to navigate that? For instance, I think in other states or something, I've seen signs that say yield to the right or something. What measures can you do to educate people about how to get through there?
By the way, I hate the yield to the right sign. I think most people don't understand it. But I think what we could do is the simplest sign I've seen that really describes how you deal with a four-way stop is to say alternate. Some kind of very simple sign that tells people you have to alternate. And we'll take that into consideration.
Anyone else? Yes, sir.
Brett Rodriguez, 8 Wells Lane, I spoke earlier. I want to go back to the comment that Jerry said about the comparing.
We're asking questions of the engineer at the moment.
Okay, great. So back to the speed bump. I know White Oak Ridge is a county road. Highland is a town road. Who cares? The road is a road. Get it done. I mean, come on, it's common sense.
He's already said he can't speak to that.
I mean, that's another issue.
Right. But it's common
we
sense,
can
though.
discuss it, but I just wanted to address your concern.
I mean,
Yeah, hi, Marilee Reesbeck, 91 Whittingham Terrace. I have 2 questions. First of all, you said that the volume is greater than 3,000. What is the volume? Is my first question. And my second question is, can we reduce the speed limit on that road to 25, and would that?
So here's why I'm saying it is greater than 3,000. If you recall, I said it's about 300 in one direction and 3 in the other, so that's 600. As a general rule of thumb, the daily traffic is 10 times the peak traffic. So 10 times 600 is 6,000. So I'm not sure if it's 5, 6, or 7, but that the data tells me it's more than 3.
And the speed limit? What happens if we reduce the speed limit?
Well, the speed limit is 30 miles an hour. That's something we're looking at, by the way, to reduce the speed limit, yes.
We'll just get tickets for going to the bathroom.
One more.
One more.
Is that me?
That's you.
That is me. John Stark, 11 Northland Road. Is there, for the engineer, are there any other devices, not speed bumps, but a rumble strip or a speed cushion that is used to reduce speed? I know rumble strips tend to be noisy, and
You
a lot of
answered my
people.
question.
Well,
You
okay.
answered your question.
Right, but how about speed table? Cushion.
Yeah, speed table are also another treatment. This is, by the way, you take the intersection of Hobart and Highland, and you raise it by approximately 3 to 4 inches, and it becomes a speed table to lower speed.
I think your question, I appreciate it, but I think it's outside the scope of what we're doing today in terms of trying to focus on the four-way stop. But it's something that the township may consider if you bring that to their attention.
I think I just did.
I move that the public hearing be closed. Do you have a second?
Do we have a second? Second.
I'll
All in
start.
favor? Aye. We're closing the public session so we can discuss it, amongst ourselves. All right,
Okay. It's nice that everybody came out tonight, not just for me, but to come and talk about a lot of you have probably never been to a meeting, so I'm glad you're engaged. You see how sausage is made, and you see how important it is. But this didn't come up 2 weeks ago. There's some residents here that brought this up, to me almost a year ago, and it takes a long time, and it took some time. So I'm glad that this is something that we can address. It sounds like we all agree it's a dangerous intersection. We all agree on that. So how do we address it? I'm not a traffic consultant. I don't think anybody else here is a traffic consultant. And that's why we employ Mazer and engage them to study this at your expense. Maybe it's not comprehensive enough to totally handle the situation, like pedestrian safety and crosswalks. And we've applied for a grant for safe routes. And so we are looking into that because we do need more there. But at this point, the main thing that I learned from Alex over there is that there's 3 E's, right? Engineering, education, and enforcement, right? We learned that in traffic school. First, we got to do the engineering. We got to put in the stop sign, and we have to educate the people. Whether it's a beacon, look ahead, idiot, here comes a stop sign, whatever the sign says. But we obviously have to do that, like Ms. Strasburg said earlier. That's part of education. You take some time to do that. You have to ease people in. And obviously we have to enforce. It's not just our new police officer, but we have enforcement obligations, and we will enforce and make sure. But at this point, it just seems that, to me, this is definitely needed at this point, and I'm in favor of it.
Ms. Millburn, can you speak to it?
Sure. I want to say that I am grateful that there have been less accidents since we took the proactive steps of trimming trees and shrubbery to improve sight lines and visibility. I believe also that we should lower the speed limit to 25 miles per hour on Highland to slow traffic in anticipation of the full stop at that intersection. And I believe this would be the next step, a 4-way stop to ensure vehicular and pedestrian safety with the recommendation of our traffic engineer on his most recent evaluation.
Thank you.
Oh, one more thing.
Oh, sure.
I also think that we should look at whatever the timeline is from when this potentially would be installed, that we have a rigorous review of 120 days or 90, 180 days, and look at what has happened and have a rigorous post-mortem to see if in fact this is the best choice for the intersection.
Thank you. Mr. Lee, do you wish to speak to this?
I do not.
Okay, Ms. Edler?
No.
Okay. I go through the 3-way stop every day at Glen, and for the most part, I have seen people speed through it once in a while, but for the most part, people learn how to deal with intersections that they have to alternate or take turns. I think that our traffic engineer has explained why he's making the recommendation he did. And I think that as a committee person sitting up here, the safety and well-being of the town has to take priority, and I can't say that it's not correct. I rely on our traffic engineer, and for that reason, I'm going to vote for it. And with that, do you want to?
I move that the ordinance entitled 2521-18 be adopted on final reading, and that the township clerk be directed to publish the ordinance by title as passed on final reading in accordance with the law.
May I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Levy?
Yes.
Ms. Lieberberg?
Yes.
Ms. Rosenberg?
Yes.
Ms. Egla?
No.
Mayor Burstein?
Yes. Okay. Our next ordinance is 2522-18. Mr. Levy.
2522-18, as we reported at the last meeting, the FCC recently adopted the Accelerating Wireless Broadband Deployment by Removing Barriers to Infrastructure Investment Order. I'm sure all of you are familiar with it. It allows small cells on existing poles and the placement of new poles in the municipal right-of-way. The purpose of the ordinance is to provide for reasonable regulations concerning the placement of small cell wireless facilities within the township, consistent with state and federal law through the implementation of a right-of-way permit procedure. Tonight is the date and time set for the public meeting and a final passage as advertised in accordance with law.
I declare the hearing open. Would anybody like to, well, from the Township Committee, anybody want to comment or question with respect to ordinance 2522-18? Anyone from the public want to comment on ordinance number 2522-18?
I move that the public hearing be closed and the ordinance be adopted on final reading and the Township Clerk be directed to publish by title as passed on final reading and in accordance with law.
May I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Reedy?
Yes.
Ms. Lieber?
Yes.
Ms. Rosenberg?
Yes.
Ms. Claudia?
Yes.
Mayor Barsney?
Yes. Does any committee member have an item of old business to address?
Just reminding you, my old business is my proposal last meeting for an ethics, a body of ethics, municipal ethics board established by this municipality, members chosen by virtue of an known and consistent reputation for integrity and the knowledge of local government affairs. No more than 3 members of the board should be of the same political party. I think this is important to ensure balance when there will not be some for a while. So discuss amongst yourselves.
Okay, well, my comment to that is there is a state ethics board that we are all required, and we are required to act ethically, and I'm sure that if there are complaints, they can be addressed there. I would want to first understand if there would be any difference between that and something at our level here before I would even start considering. So I would have to do some research into it before I would, go forward with it. Anyone else want to comment? Okay, any other old business? Any new business?
Mayor, I have new business. I would like to direct the business administrator to move forward and go out for RFPs for Millburn's professionals. This is a practice that Millburn Township has not adhered to. I advocate for the TC to open up the process for transparency in a fair and open manner, which is the law in the state of New Jersey. This guarantees the town opportunities for best practices when going out for contracts. In the spirit of transparency, we could not simply rubber stamp contracts from previous years. Usually this process for going out for RFPs starts after Labor Day. However, it is not too late. The TC will defer reappointments on January 2nd at the reorg meeting. At that time, the TC will begin the process of reviewing the proposals that have come in. We expect to complete this process by the end of January. In the interim, our current professionals can continue to work for the township on a month-to-month basis. We fully encourage and expect the current professionals to send in their proposals. Many already have. The administration can post the RFPs and will on the Millburn website, the Millburn Item, and the Star Ledger, and the League of Municipalities. Just so you know, we have many professionals that we employ in town. Township Attorney, Labor Council, Special Tax Council, many other councils, Auditor, Traffic Engineer, Bond Counsel, Appraiser, Surveyor, Town Planner, Historic Preservation Consultant, Computer Maintenance, Health and Benefits Consultants, GIS, which is Geographic Information Systems for Mapping, Zoning, and Boundaries. The practice of going out for professionals RFPs has not been done for multiple years. I believe this is a very positive action moving forward in the township. There's a statute, New Jersey State Assembly 19:44A-20.4 ETSEQ. This is part of the fair and open manner law in the state of New Jersey. I would like to see this move forward for Millburn Township. Thank you.
Any other items of new business? Okay, we're ready for public discussion. So before we start public discussion, sorry, 1 second, because I'm going to forget at the end of this meeting. I wish everybody happy holidays and a happy new year, because I will forget to say that later. That was being said. Please come up, name and address, and the comments on the record.
John Scharf, 11 Hawthorne Road, Short Hills. A couple of matters. Last week, there was the issue about the road, about downtown, and the number of accidents, and hearing about Hobart and Highland. One of the things that I took some time just having a cup of coffee in town, and one of the things I observed was that there was an extraordinary number of distracted drivers in town. They drive while they're talking on their phone, they're maybe drinking coffee, doing makeup, and statistically, that does cause accidents. Now, there are technologies out there that will detect somebody using their phone while they're driving. And I first saw it in the UK at a trade show, but there seems to be a company in New Jersey, in Metuchen, that produces a product called Road Hound. And what it does is that if you, it could be pole mounted or it could be freestanding on, this little sleigh, and I'll hand this over to you. If it detects if somebody's driving through the monitored area and they're on the phone, which could be on Highland or Hobart or down on Main Street or wherever, it will start flashing. And with an icon that has a cell phone with across it. And it also, if the police were monitoring it, will direct them to the car that is using a phone in that monitored area, which of course could be a boon for enforcement and enforcing a no phone usage area or driving while using that. Other towns have also, quite a number of them, have passed ordinances not allowing, making it prohibited to use a phone, either texting or on the phone, speaking on the phone while you're driving through the town. So it might be a quicker way to gain that safety. The units themselves are only $6,000. Since they're in Metuchen, they're not that far away, I'm sure. They would be more than happy to come down and take a look at the roads and advise as to what can be done and how to do it. But this is for you, Alex. Okay?
Thank you.
I never bring you a problem without a solution. Anyway, but there is a problem, and it's still 28 Whitney Road. Here we are, 2 weeks later, 6 months after they demolished it and left it like a pile of crap down the street. One of the curious aspects of this demolition, and the property was bought by the Guafeng Chi, QI, last name, November of 2017. Now, frankly, I've invested in real estate and bought speculative real estate. You've worked very quickly to flip the property. This has been sitting dormant for a very long time, at this point over a year, and 6 months of it in a dilapidated state, which of course creates a problem for anybody who has a property around there. The appraisers call the effect of a dilapidated property near you, the negative effect, they call it external obsolescence, which has a diminution of real estate value effect on surrounding property. We have an ordinance in town that talks about property maintenance. It's very clear. It was specifically written that properties should not affect the quality of life or the values of surrounding properties. And in the event that it's not corrected, there's a remedy on the books, which you know is $2,000 a day. Now, for whatever reason, it's right there, Alex. It's right in the remedy.
I understand. And I've asked the attorney to look into the ability to enforce the code enforcement portion that's involved while someone has an active permit. So that we are looking into it.
Right. Now, this particular owner obviously needs a sword of Damocles over his head in order to motivate him to do something. At the same time, we who live in the surrounding area are forced to look at this. And it's unfair. Now, curious aspect of this renovation, well, demolition, let's not call it renovation, is in the corner of the property. I'll show this to you. This guy put up, as soon as he demolished the top floors, he put up a mailbox. Well, that's a whole other thing, but well, let's not go there. But anyway, he put up a mailbox. So this dilapidated property, and this owner lives in town. Certainly if you own property, you get any kind of correspondence to the owner's home. But there's a mailbox there, which I find very odd and very curious. There's something odd about this whole thing. Not turning the property quickly, if you're flipping it, if they're speculators, leaving it there, and as I mentioned in the past, it's not uncommon for somebody to purchase a property, you know, in certain areas, create a nuisance on that property with the intent of devaluing the surrounding property to be able to capture those properties at a reduced cost. And, you know, if it's happening here, it's probably happening in other parts of town. Maybe, but it's happening down the street from me, you know, and you'll be seeing me often, right? So, until this is somewhat resolved, and again, $2,000 a day, it's in the code, okay? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. David Cosgrove, 99 Oakview Terrace. I'd like to get an update on the Woodland litigation.
What?
There's a January 30th discovery deadline set by the court. There's nothing been filed with the court at all. So there's nothing going on with that. Okay. And we're not going to have a meeting scheduled tomorrow. The agenda come out tomorrow, like I was told last time, nothing's going on. And then the next day he issued an agenda of a meeting.
I don't know when anything else will be scheduled. I can't take it.
Mayor, that's your answer as well? I asked about 3 meetings ago if there was anything going on. And I was told by your counsel and you nothing was going on. And then the next morning, an agenda issued by the township council that there was a meeting that Thursday morning.
I can assure you there's no meeting this week or next.
Okay, thank you.
Stephanie Malios, 86 Whitney Road in Short Hills. Thank you again for entertaining me speaking. I wanted to bring to your attention, I have copies for everybody, that on Ridgewood Road in Maplewood, New Jersey, the adjacent town, on the corner of Ridgewood and Maryland Roads in front of Jefferson Elementary School, there's a speed limit sign that says school, speed limit 15 miles per hour when children are present. I would respectfully request that Millburn Township adopt the same policy for every single school in town, and I really can't understand why it's not already done. But be that as it may, I happen to live near the middle school, and the streets there are very narrow. There's no sidewalks, there's no sewers, there are open stone channels. When there's leaves or snow, nobody can walk through, and I've lived there 13 years, and there used to be a big sign at the top of Whitney Road in Hobart that said no through traffic, teachers only, and the other side of Whitney said no through traffic, buses only. One day, somebody ran over the sign, and it never seemed to reappear. All the police officers seem to have amnesia over this, but all the residents who live there have known that it was always there, And now what's happening is people in their misguided attempts to get to school early are driving down Whitney Road, Hawthorne Road, Haddonfield Road, Midhurst Road at unbelievable rates of speed on very narrow little streets. And people actually honk at me for walking my child to school, which is shocking, and I can tell you, well, I'll stop there. So anyway, other people walk in the neighborhood too, people with animals, like my dog, people who walk to the Millburn train station, along with many, many children who unfortunately don't walk to the middle school anymore because it's so terrifying. This, coupled with the raising of the bus fees when the buses were basically useless last year, has resulted in an extraordinary amount of traffic in a neighborhood that does not do well with this. So I respectfully request that this be evaluated, and perhaps every school could have this, because it just seems to make complete sense to me, and I don't know who could possibly think of opposing it. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
This is Carol Mellor-Kirsch, 93 Cedar Street. I wanted to agree with Ms. Rosenberg about, or not agree, tune into what you said with the 3 E's, engineering, enforcement, and what I'm most interested in is education. I think that's a really significant problem. I have, I'm looking at a letter that I read to the committee last September 17th, a year ago, about such an issue. Since we have, most of us have not gotten a license within the last 8 years, we are probably not familiar with the 2010 crosswalk law that was mentioned earlier. My point is that we don't know what to do in certain situations, as strange as that seems. I can remember somewhere in excess of 45 years ago, I saw the very first 4-way stop streets that I had ever seen. I saw them in Florida. I had no idea what to do with it. And I hadn't seen them in New Jersey until relatively recently. And once you know what to do with it, who got here first, okay, it's my turn. It's simple, but people don't know that. They didn't, unless they've had their license within a short time, they would not have even ever learned about that. So I think it's really important to concentrate on the education part of that. And one of the things I had mentioned was the New Jersey Department of Transportation has a Street Smart Safety campaign that has a whole thing about how you go about educating drivers about certain things. I have a particular interest in crosswalks, and the one out there really scares me. But in any event, if you would like, I could send a copy of this letter that I had presented a year ago, or more than a year ago now, and perhaps along with all the changes that you're looking at making, which is great. That intersection is the worst one I know about. But I think that we really also need to think about educating people what to do when you encounter a 4-way stops and various other things like that. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Janet Pizar, Main Street. I'd like to be written into the record, please. I'd like to say that I believe Councilwoman Rosenberg's comment about an ethics committee in this town has great, great merit. It was not so very, very long ago there was an episode in this town of great corruption and covert collusion, and I believe that on the state level it's far too removed to adequately assess an ethics charge, an ethics violation on the municipal level. I say that because I have experienced it. Number one, I did file an ethics complaint, and it seems as though the the entity that is doing an evaluation seems to believe that an ethics violation is a conflict of interest, that it's always going to revolve around money and self-interest, and that is not the case at all. I also wanted to say, if I could think of the second point, sometimes it's a kangaroo court, too political, in that an ethics committee can be corrupt in its own right, and that is really very, very sad. I think an ethics committee is needed. I think it is needed on this municipal level, and I think the structure of it, those who sit on it, have to be selected and impaneled very, very carefully. It is needed. There's no doubt about it. So I would hope research can be done very, very soon, because I hope to have this start to roll forward early in the new year. And I'd just like to end with a great thank you to Councilwoman Rosenberg for always doing her job with not only great intellect and great wisdom and hard work, but always, always the professionalism, always the graciousness, and the personality and the person that is very much needed on the township committee. You have left very huge, huge, huge shoes to fill. But I want to thank you so much and to tell you, you will be missed.
Thank you.
Sorry, I'm kind of pinned in here. Lynn Ranieri on the New Terrace. I just have a small question, just in case the township committee looks closer at Ms. Sharp.
Sharp.
This proposal is, how do you distinguish when it's a passenger in your car using their cell phone or the driver, and how do you handle it if they get flashed and then the driver flips the phone over to their teenager in the back seat?
These are all good questions. It's worth asking the vendor.
Oh,
Okay.
I'm sure they'd be willing to demonstrate.
Anyone else?
I thought you were going to talk about the dilapidated house.
Do you have a motion? Motion to adjourn.
Oh.
Second?
Second.
Adjourn.